Have you ever felt invisible? Like no matter how hard you try, you'll never fit in? That was Emily's life, until the night rich girls mocked her weight, and the millionaire everyone admired asked her to dance. This is a story about humiliation, courage, and an unexpected twist that changed everything. Stay with us, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove your true worth can't be measured by what the world sees. Emily always kept to herself, walking through the quiet streets of her small town with a sense of being unseen, almost like a shadow slipping past the bright lights of the big houses she passed every day. She worked long hours at a little coffee shop, wiping counters and serving lattes with a smile that didn't always reach her eyes. Helping her mom pay the bills was part of her routine, a responsibility she carried with quiet pride, even if it made her feel like the world had already written her story before she could. At home, she'd glance at the towering mansions and wonder what it would be like to belong somewhere that felt grand, to be noticed and valued for who she truly was. Deep down, Emily dreamed of a life where she mattered, where she could step into a room and not feel invisible, where her smile and presence could actually make someone's day better. Most people didn't know her name, but she had a heart full of hopes and small, secret ambitions that she kept tucked away. Every morning, as she tied her shoes and opened the door to the bustling streets, she carried that quiet longing, wondering if anyone would ever see the person she really was. Even on days when the sun seemed brighter than her spirits, Emily's eyes wandered to the places she could never quite touch. The elegant cafes, the boutiques with sparkling windows, and the laughter that seemed to float from gatherings she was never invited to. She noticed the way the town's wealthier residents moved with confidence and grace, as if the world had carved out a special place just for them. And she longed for that feeling of being wanted, being included. The small town itself was a character in her life, holding both comfort and reminder of her limitations. With streets that told stories of privilege she could only admire from afar. Yet Emily didn't let bitterness take root. She quietly absorbed these glimpses of another life, secretly thinking about what it might feel like to be someone who could walk into a room and be seen. She kept a small notebook with sketches and ideas she'd never show anyone, a private world where she could imagine herself strong, confident, and acknowledged. Her co-workers saw a polite, quiet girl, but behind her careful demeanor, there was a rich landscape of dreams and subtle resilience. Emily's world was small but full of invisible threads connecting her hopes to the life she secretly longed for. Her mornings were always the same, the smell of coffee beans and the clatter of cups greeting her like a ritual. She moved through the cafe with practiced ease, yet each interaction was a reminder that she was just part of the background, essential but unnoticed. Sometimes, customers would compliment her on her kindness or her smile, and for a brief moment, she felt a flicker of worth. But it was fleeting, quickly overshadowed by the memory of passing those mansion-lined streets, where every luxury and bright window seemed to whisper, "You don't belong here." Emily never complained, though. She believed her life could hold more than this, even if she didn't know how to reach it. Each day, she carried her quiet hope like a fragile flame, careful not to let the world snuff it out, dreaming of recognition that might one day arrive. In the evenings, she would walk home slowly, thinking about all the little things she wanted but felt were out of reach. She noticed the smiles of couples, friends laughing together, people dancing as if life had already handed them their piece of joy. And she wondered if happiness would ever feel that effortless for her. Yet, Emily also carried a certain strength, an understanding that even if the world overlooked her now, she had the power to keep going. She found beauty in small victories, a kind word, a completed project, a shared joke with a coworker. These moments stitched together her resilience, giving her hope that one day, her life would expand beyond these streets and walls. Emily's quiet struggle wasn't just about money or appearances. It was about belonging and feeling worthy. She wanted to be seen for her intelligence, her creativity, and her kind heart, rather than judged for the superficial things others focused on. Her secret sketches, the plans she never showed, and the dreams she whispered to herself were proof that she was quietly preparing for a life that could surprise even her. There was a constant tug-of-war inside her, contentment with her small world versus yearning for recognition and respect. Every day she made small choices that strengthened her quietly, building a foundation that the world had yet to notice. Even though she seemed ordinary, Emily carried an inner world that few ever glimpsed, full of ambition and longing. She watched the wealthy in town, imagining herself in their shoes, trying to figure out how life could be different, how she could bridge the invisible gap between her world and theirs. And while envy sometimes sneaked in, it was mixed with fascination and determination. She believed that if she stayed true to herself, if she continued to work hard and nurture her dreams, someday something extraordinary could shift her life. Her hope wasn't loud, but it was persistent, like a heartbeat in the quiet. Every day, Emily's quiet struggle shaped her, teaching her patience, humility, and resilience. She moved through the world unseen but thoughtful, noticing details others missed, learning lessons in observation and empathy. She might not have had wealth, influence, or admiration yet, but she carried something just as powerful, a vision for herself, a spark that refused to be extinguished. And as she walked past the grand houses, feeling like a stranger, she also felt a flicker of possibility, a sense that the right moment, the right person, or the right opportunity could one day change everything. That moment, however, was still waiting just around the corner, ready to rewrite her story. From high school halls to the small-town grocery store, Emily carried the label of the chubby girl everywhere she went. Every glance from the rich girls felt like a judgment, each whisper cutting deeper than she let herself admit. She remembered birthday parties she wasn't invited to, photos where she was awkwardly cropped out, and lunch tables where laughter felt like it belonged to everyone but her. The weight of those cruel words followed her into adulthood, lingering even in the coffee shop where she worked. Customers' small remarks sometimes echoed the harshness of her past, but she learned to smile politely and keep moving. Even when the sting of mockery threatened to pull her down, Emily held onto a quiet dignity, refusing to let the world define her entirely. She carried a private strength, forged from years of exclusion, that no one could see but that gave her a sense of inner resilience. Despite the daily challenges, Emily didn't retreat completely from the world. She observed, learned, and found small ways to assert herself. At school, she excelled quietly in classes, never needing the approval of the girls who mocked her. Their laughter often filled the hallways, but she focused on the books in her arms, imagining a future far beyond their petty games. At the grocery store, she felt the same piercing stares, yet she moved with careful composure, understanding that their cruelty revealed more about them than about her. Evenings were sometimes the hardest, when memories of ridicule crept in, yet she reminded herself of her small victories, finishing a shift, helping a friend, surviving the day. Those moments of endurance became part of her invisible armor. The rich girls never missed an opportunity to comment on her weight, fashion choices, or demeanor. Emily remembered one lunchroom incident vividly. A group of girls pointing at her, whispering in that cruel, high-pitched tone that seemed designed to sting. She forced a laugh, pretending it didn't matter, but inside she felt each word pressed down, a reminder that society often values appearances over substance. Even so, Emily refused to lash out. She learned early that dignity and patience often carry more weight than anger. With each passing year, the mockery shaped her resilience, teaching her to survive in spaces that didn't feel safe. The world might not have been kind, but she cultivated an inner life that remained untouched. At work, the echoes of childhood cruelty still lingered. Coworkers sometimes made casual jokes or teasing remarks, and although they were lighter than past humiliations, Emily still felt the familiar pinch of self-consciousness. She learned to navigate the social nuances carefully, balancing politeness with self-protection. Each day was a small negotiation between who she was and who the world expected her to be. And while some days the weight of judgment threatened to overwhelm, Emily clung to the notion that her worth was not dictated by the shallow opinions of others. Her quiet resilience became a subtle rebellion against a world eager to define her by her appearance. Even as an adult, Emily noticed how these experiences shaped her perception of herself. Mirrors and reflections often reminded her of the labels she'd been given, but she also caught glimpses of something stronger, a core self that refused to bow to ridicule. She started to pay attention to small personal victories, like a smile from a stranger or a compliment from a loyal customer, and these moments gradually built a foundation for confidence. She realized that the cruel words, though painful, had taught her empathy, patience, and the subtle art of perseverance. Each insult became a stepping stone, not a roadblock. Emily also noticed patterns in human behavior, seeing how the rich girl's cruelty was more about their own insecurities and social positioning than about her. This observation became a quiet lesson in psychology, teaching her to differentiate between valid critique and meaningless mockery. It allowed her to carry herself with a measured calm in social situations, even when the past threatened to surface. She internalized the understanding that people's words often reflect their limitations, not hers, and this gave her a secret strength that no one could see. The weight of cruel words existed, yes, but it no longer controlled her. By the time she reached her early 20s, Emily had developed a careful balance, aware of the cruelty around her, yet refusing to let it define her entire existence. She had learned the art of smiling through pain, of working hard, and of nurturing hidden dreams that no one could take away. While the sting of those rich girls' mockery never fully disappeared, it became a silent motivator, a reminder that life could hold unexpected surprises. She carried these lessons quietly, preparing herself for moments she didn't yet know would come, when courage and resilience would be rewarded in ways she could only imagine. Emily's best friend had been buzzing with excitement for weeks, holding an invitation to the biggest charity ball of the year. "You have to come with me?" she urged, eyes sparkling with anticipation. Emily hesitated, glancing at her plain blue dress and feeling the familiar tug of self-doubt. She wasn't sure she belonged among chandeliers, sparkling gowns, and polished smiles. But something in her friend's insistence made her pause. Maybe, just maybe, this night could be different, a chance to feel normal, to step into a world that usually seemed out of reach. Reluctantly, she agreed, tucking her nervousness behind a small smile. On the way to the venue, she kept her eyes down, imagining herself invisible, hoping to blend in without drawing attention. Her friend chattered endlessly, oblivious to the tight knot in Emily's stomach. She reminded herself that no one had to know how awkward she felt, that she could observe, enjoy the evening, and perhaps leave with a small taste of something she'd only ever dreamed of. There was a cautious thrill in the air, a hope that tonight might offer a glimpse into a life she had never experienced. As they arrived, Emily's heart skipped. The grand building loomed ahead, windows aglow, the sound of music drifting outside. Women in flowing gowns and men in crisp suits walked past, laughter echoing like it belonged to a world she rarely touched. She adjusted her dress nervously, wishing she could feel as elegant and confident as everyone around her. Every step inside heightened her awareness of being different, of standing out in ways she hadn't planned. Yet, beneath the anxiety, a spark of excitement flickered. Tonight might be her chance to exist in a world that usually overlooked her. The moment they stepped in, Emily's eyes took in the scene with awe. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, casting shimmering patterns on the polished floors. Waiters moved gracefully, offering trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres, while soft music floated across the room, blending with murmurs of conversation. It was dazzling, intimidating, and somehow intoxicating. She felt small and ordinary, yet part of her couldn't help but imagine herself walking confidently across the dance floor, not as a background figure, but as someone worth noticing. Her friend squeezed her hand, whispering, "See? No one's even looking at us." Emily tried to believe her, but the lingering self-consciousness tugged at her. Every glance from the wealthy guests seemed to remind her of how different she was. She caught herself comparing her modest dress to the sparkling gowns around her, wondering if she could ever feel as sophisticated or poised. Yet, beneath all the doubt, there was a quiet determination. She wouldn't let fear control her, not tonight. Maybe, just for a few hours, she could feel normal, included, and free from the judgment she'd carried for years. As they moved through the crowd, Emily noticed the tiny interactions others had. Smiles exchanged, subtle compliments, effortless grace in conversation. She imagined herself fitting in, learning the dance of social elegance, and she felt a mix of envy and hope. It was a new kind of observation, one that fueled her imagination instead of discouraging it. Maybe the night wouldn't be perfect, maybe she would feel awkward, but it could still offer her a glimpse into a life she longed for, a moment to step outside the world that had always told her she didn't belong. By the time they reached the main hall, Emily's nervousness had morphed into cautious anticipation. The music swelled, couples twirled gracefully, and the evening felt alive with possibilities. She realized that this night, despite her fear, could mark the first step towards something extraordinary. It wasn't about fitting in perfectly or impressing anyone. It was about daring to step into a space where she had always felt invisible. And in the back of her mind, a tiny spark whispered that perhaps the universe had a surprise waiting for her, something that could turn this ordinary girl's night into a moment she'd never forget. Emily stepped fully into the ballroom, and the sheer opulence of the place took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, reflecting 100 tiny rainbows across the polished floors. The music, soft yet commanding, filled the room as elegantly dressed guests moved gracefully, laughing and sipping champagne. She clutched her small purse tightly, trying to calm the flutter of nerves in her stomach, feeling both thrilled and out of place. Every glance at the guests in glittering gowns and sharp suits reminded her how different her world had always been. And yet, she couldn't help but be drawn into the energy of the night, letting herself imagine that maybe, just maybe, she could belong here. As Emily walked further, she noticed the subtle ways people interacted. The quick smiles, whispered compliments, and tiny social maneuvers that made the room feel like a carefully choreographed dance. She realized she was navigating more than just the physical space. She was moving through a web of status, judgment, and expectation. Each step she took seemed to test her confidence, a gentle reminder that the world of wealth and influence wasn't as simple as it seemed. She kept her head low, observing quietly, hoping to avoid drawing attention. But the spotlight had a way of finding those who least expected it. Despite her anxiety, Emily tried to enjoy the evening, letting herself marvel at the details. The delicate silverware, the lavish centerpieces, and the musicians who played with effortless grace. She noticed the effortless elegance of the guests and wondered how much of it was natural and how much was carefully rehearsed. For a moment, she felt part of a story she had always read about but never imagined living. But lurking beneath the beauty of the evening was an undercurrent of tension, subtle glances and hushed whispers that hinted the night held more than just glamour. The rich girls, recognizable from her past, were already in their element, moving through the crowd with practiced ease, laughing and making casual comments that cut quietly through the room. Emily could feel the familiar pang of anxiety, memories of years spent enduring their cruelty flashing in her mind. She told herself to stay calm, to act composed, but the feeling of being judged and out of place lingered like a shadow behind her every step. Even in a room full of strangers, the past had a way of catching up. As she reached the buffet, a group of those same rich girls passed by, their laughter carrying across the room. One of them accidentally bumped into Emily, spilling a drink across the hem of her simple blue dress. Heat rose to Emily's cheeks, not just from embarrassment, but from the unmistakable reminder that her presence unsettled them. She swallowed the urge to react, took a deep breath, and focused on steadying herself. Her friend wanted to leave, sensing the tension, but Emily forced herself to stay. She didn't want to give them the satisfaction of her retreating. Even as she navigated these small traps, Emily's attention wandered to the wider room. Couples twirled gracefully across the dance floor, laughter and music blending seamlessly into the night. The grandeur of the event was intoxicating, yet Emily couldn't shake the feeling that each movement and smile she saw was measured, curated, designed to reinforce a world she had only observed from the sidelines. Her nerves and awe coexisted in a delicate balance, each moment teaching her to be aware, patient, and observant in a setting that was as beautiful as it was treacherous. Despite the subtle hostility and the feeling of being watched, Emily tried to hold onto a sense of wonder. She reminded herself that this night could still be magical, that there might be moments of joy and discovery if she remained present and attentive. She knew that navigating this environment would require courage, but also that her resilience and quiet strength, cultivated over years of struggle, might just be enough. The night had its glitter, but it also held challenges that would test her in ways she hadn't yet imagined, preparing her for an unexpected moment that could change everything. Emily was just reaching for a plate of hors d'oeuvres when she heard the whispers. The same rich girls from her past now glided past in sparkling gowns, their eyes sharp, their laughter pointed. Every glance seemed designed to cut, every giggle a reminder of how she had always felt different. One girl nudged another, pointing subtly at Emily, and the words, though soft, carried the sting of old memories. She felt her cheeks heat up, but she forced herself to stand tall, clutching her plate like a shield, determined not to show the hurt bubbling inside. The cruel attention didn't stop there. One of the girls accidentally brushed against Emily, and a drink tipped over, spilling across her blue dress. A hush ran through Emily as she froze, unsure whether to react. Her friend whispered frantically that they should leave, sensing the growing tension, but Emily stayed rooted. Something inside her whispered to endure, to not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. She felt a mixture of embarrassment and defiance, a strange cocktail that made her heart race and her mind sharpen. Every laugh, every glance, and every subtle motion from the rich girls reminded Emily of high school corridors, of parties she wasn't invited to, of moments where she had been left out and mocked. The room seemed to contract around her, as if their past cruelty had followed her into this glittering space. And yet, she kept a composed exterior, her hands trembling slightly beneath the confident posture she projected. She had learned long ago that dignity could be louder than words, and she clung to that lesson tightly, even as the whispers pierced through the evening air. Emily's mind raced as she tried to navigate the social minefield. She noticed how every movement of the girls was choreographed to remind her of her place, their smiles a subtle taunt. She reminded herself that this moment was temporary, that the night held more than humiliation. But each tiny encounter, each snicker, threatened to undo her courage, to make her shrink back into the girl who had always felt invisible. She clenched her fists subtly under her arms, drawing on the quiet strength she had carried for years, a strength that had kept her moving forward when others had laughed. Even amidst the embarrassment, Emily observed the room closely. She noted the subtle social hierarchies, the way people moved and whispered, the tiny cues that revealed insecurities behind the glittering exteriors. This awareness gave her a strange mix of vulnerability and empowerment. She realized that while she was the target of ridicule, she also had the power to understand the games being played around her. That knowledge, though quiet, became a secret source of resilience, a reminder that she could navigate this world without losing herself. Her friend tugged gently at her arm, urging her to escape the buffet area, but Emily held back for a moment longer. She wanted to face the moment fully, to endure the whispers and the stares without crumbling. Every second she stood there was a small victory, a defiance of the invisible rules that had always sought to keep her small. The humiliation stung, yes, but it also sharpened her focus, her awareness, and her resolve. She knew that something or someone might appear to change the course of the night, if she only stayed present and patient. By the time the encounter ended, Emily felt a strange mixture of defeat and determination. Her dress was stained, her heart raced, and yet she had survived the subtle onslaught of cruelty with her dignity intact. The room, filled with sparkling gowns and laughter, seemed suddenly more manageable, as if her resilience had carved out a small space for her to breathe. She took a deep breath, readying herself for what might come next, unaware that a pair of observant eyes had noticed her strength, and that an unexpected moment was about to shift everything. Emily didn't notice him at first. Across the room, Ethan Carter, the 30-year-old millionaire heir to Carter Enterprises, leaned casually against a pillar, observing the crowd with a quiet, almost imperceptible smile. Unlike the others, he wasn't drawn to the glittering gowns or the sparkling champagne. His attention had found Emily. He saw something different in her, a quiet confidence, a poise that didn't belong to the world of superficial wealth and social games. While everyone else laughed and whispered, Ethan's eyes followed her movements with genuine curiosity and admiration. He watched how she carried herself, how she adjusted her dress when the drink was spilled, how she refused to shrink despite the cruel attention. To him, this wasn't just a girl at a charity ball. It was someone who had endured hardship, someone with a strength beneath the surface that most people never noticed. His presence was unnoticed, yet intentional, as if he had been waiting for the right moment to act. Emily, unaware of the observer in her midst, continued to navigate the room, thinking she was invisible, when in fact, she had caught the attention of someone who could change the course of the evening entirely. Ethan's interest wasn't fueled by charm or superficial attraction. He was drawn to the authenticity she carried. He saw through the glitter, the pretension, the laughter of the rich girls, and recognized a character that spoke of resilience and inner strength. In his eyes, Emily's quiet dignity shone brighter than any gown or diamond in the room. He admired her ability to endure humiliation with grace, her willingness to remain present in a space designed to make her feel small. Each subtle gesture of hers resonated with him, and he knew that this night held a rare opportunity. As he observed, he began to sense the tension in the room, the whispers, the snickers, the attempts to humiliate her. And yet, he also saw how Emily absorbed it all, standing tall despite the sting. There was a calmness in her that contradicted the chaos surrounding her, a quiet confidence that not many people possessed. Ethan recognized it immediately because he had been in similar situations himself. He remembered what it felt like to be overlooked, underestimated, and judged unfairly, and he felt a strong, almost protective instinct toward her. He decided, almost instinctively, that this girl deserved more than the judgment and cruelty around her. His gaze lingered, calculating the moment when he could intervene, when he could shift the balance of the evening in a way that no one expected. He didn't plan to embarrass anyone or seek attention. His goal was simple: to acknowledge the strength he saw in her, to give her a moment where she could feel valued. This decision, quiet and deliberate, would become the pivot point for the rest of the night. As Emily moved through the ballroom, unaware of Ethan's watchful eyes, he noted every detail: the subtle tension in her shoulders, the careful movements of her hands, the flicker of doubt in her expression. He understood the courage it took to remain composed under scrutiny, and he admired it more than he could put into words. In a room filled with superficial attention and fleeting glances, he saw something real, authentic, and rare, and he knew that she had no idea how profoundly he had noticed her. By the time the first dance of the evening began, Ethan had made up his mind. He would act in a way that no one expected, challenging the invisible social rules of the room. He knew it could shock the crowd, disrupt the status quo, and perhaps even make the rich girls uncomfortable. But more importantly, it could empower Emily, giving her a moment to see herself through the eyes of someone who truly recognized her value. What happened next would change everything, and she had no clue it was coming. As the music slowed and couples began to fill the dance floor, Emily tried to blend into the background, hoping the moment would pass without incident. She felt her heart race, unsure whether to watch or hide, when suddenly, Ethan Carter appeared beside her. He didn't hesitate or smile politely from a distance. He stepped past the glittering crowd and spoke directly, his voice calm and confident. "May I have this dance?" Emily froze, her mind racing, convinced someone was playing a cruel joke. Her cheeks flushed, her hands trembled slightly, but something in his gaze stopped her from retreating. He wasn't looking at her as an outsider or a curiosity. He was seeing her, really seeing her, for the first time in a world that had rarely noticed her. The richness of the room, the sparkling gowns, even the murmurs of the wealthy crowd faded away. In that moment, it was just the two of them, and Emily felt a strange thrill of recognition, a sense that perhaps she mattered more than she had ever allowed herself to believe. As she hesitated, a spark of courage nudged her forward. She placed her hand in his, letting herself be led onto the dance floor. The whispers in the crowd began to swell, a mixture of surprise, amusement, and jealousy. Emily's mind whirled. Was this real? Was she truly dancing with a millionaire who had ignored the shallow social games and chosen her instead? The uncertainty made her heart pound, but it also ignited a tiny flame of self-belief that had been buried under years of ridicule. With each step, Ethan's presence was steady, reassuring, as if he was silently telling her, "You belong here." His words weren't loud or spoken, but the way he moved, the way he held her hand, radiated respect and admiration. Emily felt the weight of years of insecurity lift slightly, replaced by a thrilling sense of being seen, of being acknowledged not for her appearance, but for the quiet strength she had cultivated. It was a moment that felt both surreal and grounding, like discovering a hidden part of herself that had always deserved recognition. The reactions of the crowd began to shift, whispers rippling across the room, some gasps of disbelief, some murmurs of envy. The rich girls' faces contorted with shock and anger, their carefully maintained composure faltering as the balance of attention moved decisively. Emily noticed the looks, but for the first time they didn't control her. Her focus remained on the music, on the gentle guidance of Ethan, and on the realization that she was no longer invisible. The power dynamic had shifted, and she felt it acutely. Every movement on the dance floor became a statement, a subtle rebellion against the years of ridicule she had endured. Emily's confidence began to grow with each turn, each step in rhythm with the music. Ethan's quiet compliments and attentive gaze reinforced a truth she hadn't allowed herself to embrace before. She was worthy of attention, respect, and admiration. The simple act of being asked to dance had become a turning point, a validation that her life could include moments of joy, recognition, and even triumph over cruelty. By the time the song ended, Emily's world had shifted in ways she couldn't yet fully understand. She stepped back, breathless, her heart pounding with excitement and disbelief. The room felt different now, less intimidating, less judgmental, as if a single act of courage and recognition could ripple outward, transforming not just her night, but her perception of herself. And deep down, she sensed that this was only the beginning, that the dance she had just shared would lead to something far greater than she had ever imagined. The moment Emily placed her hand in Ethan's, a hush seemed to sweep across the ballroom. Gasps, whispers, and even a few stifled laughs rippled through the crowd. The rich girls, previously confident and smug, froze, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had expected Emily to shrink, to blend into the background, but instead, she was the center of attention, guided with grace and assurance by the very person they had never imagined noticing her. Their shock was palpable, a mixture of envy and frustration that contrasted sharply with Emily's growing sense of wonder. For the first few seconds, Emily felt paralyzed, acutely aware of every pair of eyes tracking her. She wanted to disappear, to escape the scrutiny, but Ethan's calm presence anchored her. His quiet smile reassured her, a silent message that she was exactly where she belonged. The room's murmurs seemed distant now, insignificant compared to the thrill of being chosen, being valued in a way she had never experienced. Every glance from him carried respect, admiration, and genuine interest, a stark contrast to the superficiality she had faced her entire life. The rich girls tried to maintain their composure, but their attempts faltered. One of them muttered under her breath, a mix of jealousy and disbelief, while another exchanged glances that screamed frustration. Emily, meanwhile, began to notice the subtle shifts around her. The whispers of judgment were now laced with envy. People who had ignored her presence all evening were suddenly aware, perhaps even curious, about the girl who had dared to step into the spotlight and been noticed by a millionaire. The balance of power in the room had shifted in an instant. Emily felt a surge of emotions: surprise, excitement, fear, and an emerging sense of confidence. The room that had once felt so intimidating now seemed smaller, more manageable, as if her presence, combined with Ethan's acknowledgement, had altered its very energy. Every step she took on the dance floor became a statement, a quiet declaration that she was no longer invisible, that she could claim space and respect without needing to change who she was. The hum of whispers underscored her transformation. Even amidst the silence, Emily could feel the tension in the air. The rich girls' faces reflected a combination of disbelief and irritation. It was as if the universe had handed her a small victory, one that shifted the dynamics of the evening without any confrontation, without any harsh words, just a single act of courage and recognition. For Emily, the experience was electric, a moment she would remember as the instant when the world's judgment lost its power over her. Ethan's steady gaze never wavered, and his gentle words, whispered as they moved, reinforced her growing self-belief. "You're exactly who you're meant to be," he said, and Emily felt the truth in those words sink in. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't performing or pretending. She was simply being herself and being seen, truly seen, by someone who mattered. The room's silence became her secret ally, highlighting the impact of that simple, unexpected choice. By the end of the song, Emily's heart was racing, but she no longer felt anxious or small. She had experienced a shift, subtle yet profound, that touched her very core. The whispers, the stares, the judgment, all had faded into background noise. The room had gone silent in awe, and in that silence, Emily discovered something far greater. The power of being acknowledged, the confidence that comes from being chosen, and the courage to step forward into a life where she could finally be seen. As they moved across the dance floor, Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest that she hadn't felt in years. Ethan's presence was calm, reassuring, and for the first time, she noticed herself relaxing. The compliments he gave were subtle but genuine. Remarks about her intelligence, her kindness, and the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from her. For the first time, she realized that she could be admired for who she truly was, not for what she looked like or what others expected her to be. Each step of the dance felt like a small victory. Emily's shoulders straightened, her head lifted, and she began to hold her gaze with a newfound steadiness. She felt an unfamiliar sense of pride in her posture, her movements, and the fact that she had endured years of ridicule with grace. For the first time, she believed in herself. Ethan's attentive presence reminded her that her value wasn't determined by the laughter of others or the opinions of those who had once sought to diminish her. Emily began to notice details she had never appreciated before. The way the music seemed to lift her, how the lights made the room sparkle, and how Ethan's quiet encouragement gave her the courage to smile. With each compliment, she felt layers of self-doubt peel away, replaced by a budding self-respect. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but as the song continued, she felt the confidence growing stronger, as if it had been lying dormant, waiting for someone to recognize it. The contrast between the whispers of the rich girls and Ethan's focused attention made her feel even more empowered. Where others had tried to tear her down, he was lifting her up. Emily realized that the judgment she had carried from her past didn't define her present. Each twirl and step on the dance floor became a statement of resilience, a quiet rebellion against the voices that had told her she wasn't enough. She felt a sense of liberation she hadn't known was possible. With Ethan's encouragement, Emily allowed herself to laugh, genuinely and freely, for the first time that night. It was a small, simple sound, but it carried weight, the sound of someone beginning to believe in themselves. The awkwardness and self-consciousness that had clung to her during the evening started to fade. She felt lighter, as if each movement, each turn, was shaking off years of insecurity and replacing it with self-assurance. The dance was no longer just an event. It was a turning point. As the song drew on, Emily noticed people around her looking at her differently. There was curiosity in their eyes, a shift in perception that was both subtle and powerful. It wasn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was about stepping into her own worth, finally allowing herself to be seen as capable, confident, and deserving. For the first time, she felt a sense of control over her own narrative, a realization that she could shape how the world saw her without changing who she was inside. By the end of the dance, Emily's confidence had blossomed into something tangible. She felt an inner strength that she hadn't recognized before, a belief in her own value that wasn't reliant on anyone else's approval. The experience of being noticed and appreciated by Ethan had awakened a part of her she hadn't known existed. And while the night was far from over, she knew one thing for certain. This newfound confidence was hers to carry forward, a quiet power that would guide her in the moments to come. Even as Emily's confidence grew, Not everyone was pleased with her newfound attention. The whispers grew sharper, more pointed, and some stares lingered with open disapproval. The rich girls, previously smug and untouchable, now seemed threatened by her presence. One of them even approached Emily in the restroom later that night, her tone a mix of jealousy and condescension, insisting that Emily didn't belong among people of their social class. Emily felt a twinge of fear, but also a strange sense of determination. The confrontation in the restroom was brief, but it lingered in Emily's mind. The girl's words, meant to humiliate, only reinforced a truth Emily had begun to realize. Her worth wasn't dictated by the opinions of others. She clenched her fists subtly, reminding herself that no amount of cruelty could erase the confidence that had begun to bloom during that dance. For the first time, she understood that respect and recognition were far more powerful than fear or ridicule. Walking back into the ballroom, Emily noticed the subtle shift in the room. Some guests whispered among themselves, curious about her boldness, while others regarded her with a quiet respect. The rich girl's attempts to undermine her seemed increasingly futile. Emily realized that their ridicule, once so heavy and intimidating, now held little power over her. She had taken the first steps toward reclaiming her self-esteem, and that was a victory far greater than any approval from the crowd. Even in the face of harsh words, Emily's smile remained steady. She discovered a new layer of resilience, one that allowed her to rise above the bitterness swirling around her. Each whispered insult or disapproving glance became background noise, drowned out by the echo of the self-worth she had begun to cultivate. The contrast between the cruelty she faced and the kindness she had experienced with Ethan highlighted the difference between superficial judgments and authentic recognition. The evening continued with its highs and lows. Emily experienced moments of doubt, but they were fleeting, replaced quickly by the courage she felt within. She realized that the path to confidence was not linear. It included setbacks, uncomfortable encounters, and confrontations. Yet, these moments did not define her. They simply highlighted the growth she was undergoing. Each challenge became a step in her journey toward self-assurance and inner strength. By the end of the night, Emily's perspective had shifted. She no longer saw herself as the target of ridicule, but as someone capable of navigating social challenges with grace. The bitterness of the backlash was tempered by the realization that she had survived it, that she had endured without compromising her integrity or her dignity. In fact, the confrontation had subtly strengthened her, revealing a courage she hadn't fully acknowledged before. As she left the ballroom that evening, Emily felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The whispers, the jealousy, and the moments of harshness were still present in her memory, but they no longer held the power to diminish her. She carried forward a spark of hope, a quiet yet growing confidence, and a deeper understanding of her own resilience. Little did she know, this night was only the beginning, and the next chapter held surprises that would further transform her life in ways she could never have predicted. In the days that followed the charity ball, Emily noticed a subtle shift in her world. People began looking at her differently, some with curiosity, some with envy, and a few with genuine admiration. She could feel the whispers of speculation about the dance with Ethan Carter circulating quietly through town. For the first time, she realized that a single evening could ripple through her life in ways she hadn't anticipated. The attention was both thrilling and overwhelming, leaving her wondering what had truly motivated Ethan to notice her. Ethan, meanwhile, didn't disappear after that night. He showed up at her coffee shop several times, each visit casual yet deliberate. He asked about her life, her dreams, and her ambitions, treating her with a genuine interest that left Emily intrigued and slightly puzzled. His presence wasn't about showing off or impressing others. It was personal, sincere, and unwavering. Emily couldn't help but wonder why someone so powerful would choose to spend time with her, someone from a world so different from his own. She began to notice small gestures that made a lasting impact. A compliment here, a piece of advice there, always delivered with kindness. It wasn't just the dance that mattered. It was the recognition and encouragement that followed. People around her noticed the change, whispering that something was different about the way she carried herself. Emily herself felt it. a growing sense of self-worth and the realization that Ethan's attention was not a fleeting gesture, but the beginning of something meaningful. Despite the growing admiration and curiosity, Ethan remained a mystery. He never boasted about his wealth, nor did he flaunt his influence. Instead, he quietly observed, engaged in thoughtful conversation, and offered moments of guidance that seemed almost intuitive. Emily found herself reflecting on their interactions, trying to decipher the reasons behind his genuine interest. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Ethan than met the eye, and that understanding him might reveal lessons about life, success, and resilience. The town's reaction only fueled her curiosity. While some envied the attention she received, others seemed inspired by her courage and the respect she earned from someone like Ethan. Emily felt a blend of pride and apprehension, unsure how to navigate the sudden spotlight, but eager to embrace the opportunities it might bring. Each day brought new questions. Why had he chosen her? What did he see that others had missed? And how could she live up to the trust he seemed to place in her? Amid all this, Emily began noticing her own transformation. She moved with more confidence, spoke with greater clarity, and allowed herself to dream beyond the limits she had once accepted. Ethan's presence, even when subtle, had sparked a change inside her, a sense that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. The mystery surrounding him became less about suspense and more about inspiration, guiding her toward growth and self-discovery. By the end of the week, Emily realized that the dance had been just the start. Ethan's quiet support and thoughtful attention had ignited a journey that stretched far beyond the ballroom. While questions about his motives lingered, they no longer intimidated her. Instead, they encouraged her to explore her own potential, embrace new opportunities, and trust that the right people would recognize her value. The mystery of Ethan Carter was no longer a source of confusion, but a catalyst for her transformation, paving the way for experiences that would reshape her life. One afternoon, Ethan invited Emily to a quiet cafe away from the bustling streets, a place where conversation could flow without interruption. He looked at her with a seriousness that made her heart skip a beat. "I want to tell you why I chose you that night," he said, his voice steady but warm. Emily listened intently, sensing that what he was about to share would reveal something deeper than mere attraction or whimsy. Ethan's eyes softened as he began recounting his own past. "When I was growing up, I was nobody. The world ignored me, laughed at me, and often made me feel invisible," he said. His words resonated deeply with Emily, echoing the very experiences she had endured all her life. She realized that the millionaire before her had once faced the same feelings of exclusion, of being underestimated, and of longing to be truly seen. He continued, "I chose you that night because I saw someone I recognized, someone strong, someone real. You carry yourself with dignity even when others try to tear you down. You didn't ask for attention, and yet you deserved it more than anyone else in that room." Emily felt a lump in her throat, her eyes brimming with emotion. It wasn't just validation. It was recognition from someone who had walked a path she could relate to, someone who understood the unspoken struggles she carried. Ethan paused, letting the words sink in. "I wanted to show you that being true to yourself matters more than fitting in. You have qualities that can't be measured by appearances or wealth. You were the choice because you are remarkable in ways that others fail to see." Emily absorbed every word, feeling layers of self-doubt crumble under the weight of his genuine acknowledgement. This wasn't about flattery. It was about seeing and affirming her worth. She thought back to that night on the dance floor, the whispers, the gasps, the stares, and realized how different everything had felt once he chose her. The embarrassment and fear had been replaced by confidence and validation. Ethan's choice had transformed not just the evening but her perception of herself. She felt seen, respected, and valued for who she truly was, not for what anyone else wanted her to be. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she processed the depth of Ethan's words. He had recognized strength where others had seen weakness, resilience where others had seen insecurity. For the first time, she understood that her past experiences, the pain and ridicule she had endured, had shaped her into someone worth choosing, someone capable of carrying herself with grace and dignity in the face of judgment. By the end of their conversation, Emily felt a shift within herself. She no longer questioned why she was noticed. She understood the value of quiet strength, the power of resilience, and the importance of being authentic. Ethan's revelation had not only explained his choice but had also ignited a spark within her, a determination to carry herself with confidence, to pursue her dreams unapologetically, and to embrace her worth without hesitation. After that conversation with Ethan, something inside Emily shifted. She felt a sense of empowerment that was entirely new, as if a door had opened to a world where her voice and presence truly mattered. For years, she had allowed cruel words and judgment to shape her self-image. But now, with Ethan's encouragement and recognition, she began to see herself differently. She realized that she had the ability to define her own worth, independent of anyone else's opinion. The very next morning, Emily made a small but significant decision. She would no longer hide. She stood a little taller, smiled more openly, and carried herself with a quiet confidence that others immediately noticed. Her friends observed the change with delight, and even strangers seemed to respond differently to her energy. It wasn't about arrogance or seeking approval. It was about embracing the belief that she deserved respect and recognition for who she truly was. Emily also began to act on her dreams, taking steps she had long postponed. She signed up for design classes, sketched ideas she had hidden away, and began envisioning a career that reflected her passions and talents. Every small action reinforced her self-belief, and each success, no matter how minor, built momentum. The turning point wasn't a single event but a series of conscious choices to step into her own potential, guided by the faith Ethan had shown in her. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Emily encountered moments of self-doubt, lingering insecurities from years of ridicule, and occasional judgment from others. Yet, these moments no longer held her back. Instead, they became opportunities to practice resilience. She reminded herself of Ethan's words, that strength and authenticity mattered far more than superficial approval, and slowly, she learned to stand firm in her own skin. One afternoon, as she walked through town with her head held high, Emily realized how far she had come. The same streets where she had once felt invisible now seemed welcoming, and the people who had ignored her presence before seemed to notice her new confidence. She didn't seek revenge against those who had mocked her, but she allowed herself to relish the quiet satisfaction of living unapologetically, embracing her worth, and refusing to be diminished by others. Emily's journey of change also inspired those around her. Friends and co-workers saw her courage and determination, and it encouraged them to reevaluate their own self-perceptions. Her story, unfolding quietly but powerfully, became an example of how belief in oneself can ripple outward, affecting not only personal growth, but also the environment and community around her. By the end of this period, Emily was no longer the girl who had hesitated at the edges of life, unsure of her place. She had become someone intentional, capable, and confident. The turning point had solidified her understanding that true power came from within, from recognizing one's own value, and from embracing opportunities without fear. Emily was now ready to face the world with a renewed sense of purpose, and the dance that had started it all remained etched in her memory as the catalyst for her transformation. Months later, Emily found herself walking into another grand event, a gala filled with the same elite crowd that had once made her feel small. This time, however, she walked in with her head high, her smile confident, and a sense of calm that radiated from her every movement. The rich girls who had laughed at her before now watched in silence, their expressions a mix of disbelief and admiration. Emily realized that nothing she could do could match the quiet power of self-assurance. The difference was palpable. People who had once ignored her were now attentive, curious about the woman she had become. Emily noticed subtle glances of respect, the kind that recognized someone who had endured hardship and emerged stronger. She didn't seek revenge or validation. The transformation in her demeanor, the confidence she carried, was enough to speak louder than any words could. For the first time, she understood that respect was earned through self-belief, not through retaliation. As she mingled among the guests, Emily's interactions were marked by warmth, intelligence, and authenticity. Conversations flowed easily, and people responded to her with genuine interest, not pretense. She noticed how differently she was perceived now, a contrast that made her smile inwardly. It wasn't just about the millionaire by her side or the public recognition. It was about the quiet confidence she had cultivated, the inner strength that allowed her to command presence without demanding it. Even the rich girls, previously the source of her humiliation, had no choice but to notice her transformation. Their whispers and mocking laughter were replaced by silent observation. Emily didn't need to prove anything to them. Her accomplishments and poise conveyed everything. The shift was subtle yet undeniable. The girl they once dismissed had become someone impossible to ignore, not through confrontation, but through quiet dignity and self-respect. Emily reflected on how far she had come since that first night. The dance with Ethan had been a turning point, a spark that had ignited her belief in herself. Now, months later, she was living proof that one moment of recognition, paired with personal effort and courage, could transform a life. She had moved from being mocked and overlooked to being noticed, respected, and quietly admired. The room seemed to respond to her presence, the atmosphere changing subtly as people took note of her composure and grace. It was a moment of empowerment, a testament to the journey she had undertaken. Emily understood that true transformation didn't require dramatic gestures or revenge. It required consistent self-belief, resilience, and the willingness to step fully into one's own worth, no matter the opinions of others. As the evening continued, Emily realized the profound lesson she had learned. Respect, once elusive and distant, could replace ridicule when one chose to embrace confidence and authenticity. The girl who had once cowered under judgment now moved with a quiet authority, demonstrating that self-worth and dignity could transform even the harshest environment. She had become unforgettable, not because of wealth or status, but because of the strength she had found within herself. Looking back, Emily realized that it all began with a single dance. That fleeting moment on the ballroom floor, when Ethan Carter had chosen her amidst the whispers and stares, had ignited a chain of events that reshaped her life. She had walked in as the girl who felt invisible, carrying years of doubt and ridicule, and walked out with a spark of self-belief that no one could take away. That dance had been more than just a gesture. It was a declaration that she deserved to be seen. As the days turned into weeks, Emily's perspective shifted entirely. She no longer measured herself against the standards or opinions of others. Each choice she made, each step she took in pursuing her dreams, was guided by the understanding that her worth was intrinsic. That one dance had reminded her that confidence, recognition, and courage were not given by others, but discovered within oneself. She now understood the power of moments that seem small but have the potential to redefine a life. The memory of Ethan's encouragement stayed with her, acting as a quiet reminder of her own strength. Emily found herself approaching challenges with a new mindset, unafraid of failure or judgment. She pursued opportunities she had once deemed impossible and embraced experiences that expanded her world. The dance had been a catalyst for transformation, teaching her that sometimes a single act of recognition can awaken the potential we've long ignored in ourselves. Emily also noticed how her relationships changed. Friends and colleagues responded differently to her energy, inspired by the confidence she exuded. The ripple effect of that one dance was profound. It reminded her that being seen and valued could inspire others to do the same, creating a circle of empowerment. Her journey wasn't just about personal growth. It was about learning to elevate others through example, kindness, and courage. She reflected on the irony of the moment. The very girls who had humiliated her were now witnessing a different version of Emily, a woman who carried herself with poise, determination, and an undeniable presence. The contrast was striking, not because of revenge or malice, but because Emily had chosen herself first. That dance had set in motion a life of intention, authenticity, and resilience, one step at a time. By embracing her value and allowing herself to shine, Emily discovered a profound truth. Self-worth isn't granted by wealth, popularity, or recognition from others. It is claimed when one chooses to acknowledge their own strength and dignity. Ethan's simple yet courageous act had shown her that sometimes people can see what we fail to see in ourselves, and that recognition can be transformative if we allow it to guide us. In the end, Emily understood that the dance was never about Ethan, the millionaire, or the eyes of the crowd. It was about choosing herself, acknowledging her own worth, and stepping into a life where she no longer let anyone else define her. That night had ignited a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and resilience that would shape every decision and every dream she pursued from that moment forward. It all started with a dance, but it became so much more. A lifelong lesson in courage, confidence, and self-love. Sometimes the world won't see your worth until you decide to. Emily's story reminds us that true beauty and strength come from within. And when you carry yourself with confidence, the right people will always notice. If this story inspired you, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that their true value has nothing to do with what others say. Your breakthrough moment could be closer than you think.